Good morning, traders. I am Emily Bonney, the CEO of the Investment Banking Institute and your host here at NewsWare's Trade Talk. Joining me is trading anchor Bill Olson, who brings more than 30 years of institutional trading experience to our program. At Trade Talk, we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Today is Wednesday, September 24th. Wall Street hit the brakes yesterday with stocks pulling back after the recent rally. All three major indices closed in the red. The Dow slipped 88 points, down 0.19%. The S&P 500 lost 36 points, or just over 0.5%. And the Nasdaq led the decline, dropping at 215 points, or nearly 1%. Now, the question is whether it's just a pause or the start of something bigger as investors turn their attention to today's economic data, Fed commentary, and earnings on deck. So, Bill, let's get into today's action with what is happening in the markets this morning.
Hi, yes. Good morning, Emily. I'm watching the S&Ps, as you know, and I'm seeing some gains this morning. We're up 0.17%. So you got to be appreciative of the positive action that we're seeing this morning. So what's causing the S&P's edge higher? It's the tech stocks. I mean, tech shares are gaining after positive earnings reports from Micron last night, and Alibaba, ticker BABA, it hit a 4-year high after unveiling, a new AI model, and they're talking about their AI spend guidance, increasing that up to over 53 billion. So that's all positive, and that's really helping boost tech shares this morning. Then there's, what else do we have? President Trump gave his speech yesterday at the UN, and he announced like a very significant pivot in his Ukraine policy. He expressed belief that Ukraine can reclaim the territory it has lost to Russia in that conflict. He expressed a big willingness to sell as many weapons as possible to NATO. Well, now, see, that makes sense to me. Okay, that's the reason for his pivot. And let's face it, Putin's not been, very helpful for President Trump in his quest to end that war. He campaigned on being able to solve that war within 24 hours, and he wasn't able to do it. So now he's going to pivot, and he's going to pivot towards Ukraine. We'll see what happens there. But it's still developing. Now, tonight, President Trump's holding a dinner in the Rose Garden, and it's going to be attended by a host of Republican senators and a host of tech CEOs. The same types of CEOs that were there before. But that's interesting. He's continued to hold these dinners with the tech CEOs. Yesterday markets markets still have a little bit of cautiousness. They still have a Band-Aid on from those comments yesterday from Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. I mean, he highlighted persistent risks in the labor market yesterday when he was giving his speech. He also said, he also talked about inflation and described the economic outlook as challenging. He flagged that equity valuations are high and elevated. And that's kind of contributed to yesterday's volatility, but we are bouncing back a little bit today. I mean, so we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But you take a look at the earnings. I mean, Micron did deliver good earnings. Air did. Miller Knoll did. And after the bell today, we got KB Homes, KBH. They're expected to release, so that's positive. But we turn our attention over to Europe, and we see that European markets are flat to lower. I mean, I shouldn't say flat. They're lower, but the DAX is down 0.13% or 30 points. Not significant, but they are lower. There's weakness in consumer goods and basic materials sectors that's causing that weakness. The FTSE's down 20 points or 0.22%. Banks and energy stocks are lower. In France is down 0.73%. Financials, industrials, healthcare stocks, they're displaying negative performance this morning. Turning it over to Asia. Asia was green last night. Well, Asia was mostly green. You look at the Nikkei. The Nikkei was up 135 points. That's 0.3%. And tech shares really led the advance. The global optimism around the AI trade is still there. You got Hong Kong. See, Hong Kong was higher by 1.37%. Tech shares did gain, but that city is essentially shut down because of that super typhoon that hit the country, and that typhoon is now headed towards China. But you look at the Chinese markets. China was up 0.83% with outperformance in tech and new energy shares. So overall, that's very positive. And you look at oil this morning, and oil is trading higher. It's up over 1%. You get WTI at $64.15. You get Brent at $68.40. I mean, the API report that came out last night after the bell showed a 3.8 million barrel draw, much bigger than what was expected. Today, you get the EIA report. It's going to probably be a draw as well. And, another big factor was, there's this pipeline from Iraq to Kurdistan that, I think it produces, it transits about 200,000 barrels per day. That was supposed to go back online. But the talks to restart that pipeline have stalled, and then you get the geopolitical tensions in the air as NATO is preparing defensive action against any Russian incursion into NATO territories. So yeah, not surprised. Oil's trading, oil's ticking higher this morning, up over 1%. But that's what I have for you in terms of a morning market update, Emily.
We're going to dive into a number of areas that you mentioned in your opening there. Of course, we're watching what's going on in terms of the political landscape. But as you mentioned, there's sort of an eye on tech today, along with what's going on with economic events. So we're going to dive into some details here. When it comes to tech, as you mentioned, there was a couple of earnings reports that came out that were positive, and there's more to look ahead to this afternoon. So let's start there. Bill, what is going on in terms of earnings action?
Well, I mean, we're going to start off with Micron, ticker MU, Michael Uncle. They beat by 17 cents on higher revenue. Now, you got to remember, the expectations going into this report, they were sky high, you know, and they met them. In fact, they beat on all lines. They beat by 17 cents, and they did that on higher revenue. So that was positive. When that report came out, that stock hit, over $174 a share, and it has since pulled back. It's now trading a little lower. But that report from Micron MU, very positive, very positive. Then we have a ticker AIR. It's AAR Corp, Apple India Richard. Now they beat by 10 cents. They did that on higher revenue as well. You look at that stock, as soon as they reported, that stock hit over $80. It has since pulled back, but, along with Micron, but, the report was positive. And then you got Miller Knoll, that's ticker MLKN. Miller Knoll also, they delivered a beat of 11 cents. And they did that on higher revenue. You look at Miller Knoll this morning, and it is also trading higher. Did you see how much it's trading higher by MLKN? Excuse me. Yeah, it's up 2.16%. So all positive. And then after the bell today, you got KB Homes. It's ticker KBH, Kilo Boy Henry. Okay, what can I say? EPS $1.50. Expected move 9.37%. What am I worried about? Put volumes. Seeing elevated put volumes going into earnings. Don't like to see that. That's a negative catalyst for me. It always takes it off my list. And but the KB Homes is releasing earnings after the bell today, Emily.
Bill, a quick note here for our listeners. AAR Corp was your pick of the day yesterday. You did mention their earnings report. We will do a full check-in on that pick of the day by the end of the show. You also mentioned KB Homes. We do have more housing data on the docket today when it comes to economic events. And this, after we're still digesting commentary from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell from yesterday, as you did mention in your opening. So let's get to the day's economic events. Bill, what is going on there?
Sure. 10 a.m., new home sales. 10:30 a.m., EIA, oil stockpiles report. Little Fed speak today. We're going to hear from San Francisco Fed Bank President Mary Daly at 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time. In terms of Powell's speech, listen, he described the current interest rates as modestly restrictive. He emphasized that the Fed is not on a predetermined path and is going to be guided by data. This is what he always says, and I believe him. He noted that there are signs of a weakening labor market, a slower economic growth rate, and inflation that remains elevated. Though that there are, and he said that there are some signs of easing in the economy, which is not great. And but he didn't really comment on whether rate cuts would happen, but he left open the possibility of additional rate cuts for this year. One of the things I found interesting was he did give a backhanded slap to criticism about the Fed, most notably by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. I mean, Bessent argues, the Fed's is institutionally bloated, mission creep. We need a shadow Fed to get Powell just said, we're used to these criticisms. But if you look at our data, what we did during our actions during the financial crisis and the 2020 pandemic to minimize the economic damage, I mean, those were real shocks to the economy, and the U.S. has performed as well or better than other advanced economies over those periods. Bam, nothing to talk about. He dropped the mic. But that was Powell yesterday in his speech in Rhode Island. But that's what I have for you in terms of an economic update, Emily.
Bill, making sure to have that commentary on hand as it's happening, but also as you're, piecing that together with other pieces of data today, like those economic reports and other Fed speak. It's important because we're really trying to find clues, not just on what the Fed's going to be doing next, but the overall health of the economy, which is sort of bubbling to the surface. And when you're trying to keep track of all of this data, I can't imagine doing it without having a professional newswire, using NewsWare to break it down into alerts. So you have economic alerts, you have Fed alerts, you also have earnings alerts. That's how you're gathering those reports. And then you're still gathering other types of data, news, and information, things like merger news, guidance news, shareholders meetings, buyback news, and catalyst calls. Every morning you are looking at your stocks grouped together, like your FANG stocks and your Dow 30 stocks. So Bill, what else do you see is possibly moving the markets today?
Just doing a quick data check. I'm looking at my Dow stocks. I got 12 lower, 16 higher, and 2 unchanged. That's good to see. I'm looking at my FANG stocks. Netflix is weakening a little bit, but everything else is positive. That's good to see. And then you look at some of the news behind the tape. You're looking at Apple, and I should say a number of these tech stocks, they receive letters from EU regulators over their platform's risk protection services. EU regulators want to know. Amazon, Amazon has that Amazon Fresh, that grocery store chain. Well, they're going to shut that fresh grocery store chain in the UK. Just after opening for 4 years. Apparently, it's not doing very well. But if you look at it, it's a difficult run for Amazon to be running a high end grocery store, and people are expecting better deals than I think what they're seeing there. So they're shutting down their Amazon Fresh stores in the UK. Meta rolls out a super PAC to combat AI regulation. Interesting. What else do we see? We're looking at Dow Jones 30 stocks. Microsoft, ticker MSFT, they're said to be in talks to build an AI marketplace for publishers for AI content use. Disney, Trump issued a veil threat to ABC over their decision to reinstate the Kimmel Show. In terms of guidance news, THO, Thor Industries, Tom Henry, Oscar, they see full year 2026 revenue coming in $3.75 to $4.25. Street estimate is $4.30. That's a negative. Miller Knoll, MLKN, they see Q2 adjusted EPS coming in 38 cents to 44 cents. Street estimates 41 cents. That's not bad. But Micron, ticker MU, they see Q1 EPS coming in plus or minus, at $3.75, give or take 15 cents. Street estimate had it at $3.04. That's a big uptick. In terms of shareholders events going on, Medtronics, MDT, Michael, David, Tom, they're going to be presenting today at the Barclays Healthcare Conference at 9:10 a.m. That could be something there. But that's what I have for you in terms of news hitting the tape this morning, Emily.
This is the type of data that NewsWare delivers daily. It's factual, it's market moving, and our alerting functions bring it to your attention as it happens. Go to www.newsware.com now and sign up for the trial and see for yourself the benefits that professional Newswire delivers. We've now made it to that time of the show for the Trade Talk pick of the day. Bill, what is your pick of the day today?
Go with CarMax, ticker KMX, Kilo, Michael, X-Ray. Listen, let's look at the fact is their earnings are coming out tomorrow morning. The EPS is $1.04. The expected move is 12.67%. You look at the call volume from yesterday, 2,943 versus 1,202. That's more than 2 to 1. Open interest, 28,000 versus 19,000. Again, that's very positive. And the major brokers, I not widely follow, but there are two major brokers and they're positive on the stock. They're raising price targets, so that's good. But in terms of an entry price, listen, I'm going to say 57.80 because I think it can hit, right now we're looking 57.50 to 58.09. So I'm going to say, 57, 80 is an entry price, but I do think we're going to see some gains in CarMax today. That's my pick of the day. Ticker KMX, Kilo Michael X-Ray CarMax on an earnings play.
CarMax it is, and aiming for that specific entry point was a similar strategy as yesterday's pick of the day. And in just a moment, we will check in on that one. So stick with us through that. But first, let's take a look at the current breaking headlines that have hit the tape in our hot off the press segment. Bill, sending it back to you.
Guardian Health and Quest Diagnostics announced blood-based screening test pack. SNY, Sam Nancy Yellow, Sanofi ordered to pay 150.7 million euros in France over anti-competitive behavior. Ncinco, JP Morgan just added to their positive catalyst watch list. The Senate doesn't know if there will be a government shutdown next week. I don't think there will be. SLNO shares are up 11% after Arcadian trial miss. FLYX is going to be joining the Russell 2000, 3000 indexes. That's fly excursions. White House is vetting new candidates for the CFTC chair. Carter, CRI, adopts a limited duration shareholders' rights agreement. NFL wants to accelerate TV rights and renegotiations as early as next week. President Trump's threatening ABC over their decision to allow the Jimmy Kimmel show back on the air. FDA, Biogen, ticker BIIB, FDA is requesting an update to technical information of one of their SNDAs. Lilly, LLY, they're going to build a $6.5 billion manufacturing plant in Texas for their obesity pill production. That's big. That's all I'm seeing this morning.
Okay, Bill, before we get to trading on this Wednesday, let's do that check-in on yesterday's pick of the day. We pointed it out earlier in the show, was AAR Corp. You did tell us that they beat on higher revenue with their latest earnings release. They reported an adjusted EPS of $1.08 that did top consensus expectations. Revenue rose 11.8% year over year, reaching about $739.6 million. Net income more than doubled. And looking ahead for Q2, management's targeting 7% to 10% sales growth, and this citing strong aerospace demand. Bill, you're hoping that the stock would dip below that $76 mark yesterday. Sure enough, it did, and there was a run from there. So how did your call work out?
Well, you have to take in multiple factors. And one of the factors I was taking in was, Powell was speaking. And I knew he was going to be a little bit hawkish. And, you look at the stock yesterday, it opened up at $77.16. But, it fell during the day to $76.35. And then, you see that rally towards the end of the day because everybody's getting excited because they know the earnings are going to be good. And it closed out at $78.35. We more than beat the 1% during the day yesterday. And then you look at the stock in the aftermarket, it hit over $80, So it's trading a little off today, but, boy, did we make the 1% in spades yesterday. So AAR Corp, was a winner yesterday. Was a winner, Emily.
The gain was definitely there. We'll put that in the win column, and we will check in with you tomorrow about today's CarMax pick of the day. Bill, thank you as always for your expert insight. Join us back here tomorrow and each weekday morning at NewsWare's Trade Talk when we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Again, I'm your host, Emily Bonney, here with trading anchor Bill Olson. Traders, you know what to do. Let's go out there and make some green.